I was born and raised in Detroit. I love my city. I adore all the growth and the architecture and all the amazing things we've accomplished, whether it be Motown or the automotive industry. And as I've traveled the world and spent time and lived in different places, I find that there's no place like home. Detroit will always be home to me, and it'll always be a place that I love. I love this staple, which is amazing. And it really inspired me to do my podcast, which is called Detroit Girl Transformed. I decided to do this podcast on Resilient Radio, which is a Black-owned station based in Detroit. And it really highlights the transformation of my city while I, as an individual, was transforming. And what kind of people come out of Detroit, which are really people with hustle and grit, who are determined and also exhibit perseverance. The podcast will really focus on different people that have different phases of transformation, whether it be their finances, their well-being, their travel experiences, how they transform their relationships, how they transform their spiritual beliefs. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, and that's what's best for our city, and that's what's best for our legacy and our future and our family.
Welcome to season 2 as we kick it off.
Welcome to season 2 of Detroit Girl Transform. I am your host and your favorite transformation girlie, Tony Carter. And I am so excited to kick off season 2 today. I definitely want to have some great conversation and good dialogue, but I also want to share some gems with one of our guests. I want to introduce Frederick Russell. He is a principal at True North Leadership Group, a global leadership and executive coaching firm based in Atlanta. Frederick prefers to be called Freddie, and he has been doing executive coaching for quite some time. He serves as a facilitator on several boards, but also as a college, he's also on the faculty for the College of Executive Coaching, and will be joining the leadership coaching faculty at the Penn State University in the fall of 2025 or 2026. So welcome, Freddie. Welcome. Woo!
Thank you, Tony. It is a joy to be with you on this podcast. I've been on the edge of my seat just to be with you.
I know we've been building up to this moment. It's been quite some time, so we are super excited. And today we're going to talk about mastering the art of executive presence. So this is our volume 1 of the masterclass series. So I'm very, very excited to have this conversation. So Freddie, let's dig right in. Before we get started, I do want to share that I met Freddie about two years ago at the National Black MBA Conference, where he taught a course on executive presence. And it was a game changer, especially for someone like me who wants to grow in corporate America. I was very excited to be a part of that and super excited to have the opportunity to have him on my podcast. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
You captured it in microcosm very well. I've been leading about 30 years now, but the last 20 or so years, I've been training leaders, and I really upped it back in 2018 when I went full-time of developing leaders and standing up our company, True North Leadership Group. We train leaders around the world. I've taught leadership on every continent in the world, with the exception of Antarctica, and the penguins are on my short list. They need it, I know, but I have enjoyed just interfacing with leaders on various levels. My passion takes over when I'm talking to leaders and talking about leadership, and we're very proud of our company, and we feel very good about our future.
And I know that you and I have worked together on several projects, not just with the National Black NBA, which was our introduction, but you actually did an exceptional training course on the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And I've been through that course before, but what I loved most about what you did was you had us evaluate and assess how we were showing up as a team member before we even got into the functionality and dynamics of the team. And I think that one of the things that you do really well as a facilitator and executive trainer is really dig deep into our introspective and how we show up so that you can make that transformative experience of how we're going to show up differently. But it starts with us, right? And I think that that's what I loved about that training as well as executive presence.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, so let's get into it. All right, so my first question, just wanted to talk through in what ways have you cultivated executive presence, and how does that show up for you?
Let me talk about my current work the last several years. Most of my clients are of a different hue. And and that's a tactful, diplomatic way of saying that I'm the only brother in the room. That when I walk in, there's always a curiosity of who is he, what can, and lurking in the room, unspoken is what can he tell us, what can he train us around, what can he teach us, and so it's important that from the opening bell that I show up well. And one of the things I'm always key about is what I call relentless preparation. And that is before I walk into the room. There's a lot of preparedness that has taken place, so I can speak with confidence. I can show up and pretty much within the first 5 minutes of my opening my mouth, I usually am able to get the room very, very quickly. But it comes about because of the preparation that goes on, not walking in a half baked, making sure I'm well prepared. I really work hard at expressing and talking clearly. I can code switch when I need to in Detroit, in Atlanta, in North Carolina, where I'm from. But when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. And so I really worked hard over the years of making sure that I speak well, that I speak not with any racial definition in my voice, even though you can tell I'm black. I'm not trying to cover anything, but I want to make sure that from the opening bell, that my words, how I express, the confidence I bring into the room, the preparedness I bring into the room, that people usually can pick up on that very, very quickly and very easily. And once they are sure that you are who you say you are presenting as you say you will, it's amazing that all of the unspoken stuff dissipates relatively quickly.
And I think a couple of things that you're touching on. One is the unspoken communication, the unspoken unconscious bias, the unspoken thoughts that are going on in our head. So I think that's very powerful to, really focus on being prepared and establishing credibility in the very beginning so people know that you are who you say you are, because that's how you capture the audience as you move into the conversation. And so getting that done on the front side probably is the most important.
Could I insert one more thing with that one? Because with our majority colleagues, they can come off half-baked sometimes and they get a pass. We don't have a pass. There's a very little margin for error. And so when we talk about we got to show up doubly better than them, that is true. We have to show up on our A game every time, because less than that, we don't have the capital that they will instinctively have because of who they are.
Yes, absolutely. And that does put a bit of pressure on us, but I think many of us have been dealing with it pretty much all our life. So, especially people of color. So the more that we just continue to lean into being prepared, understanding that we don't have the grace that other people may have, I think it just helps to prepare us to be even more successful. So
exactly.
Absolutely right. And one of the things that I loved about your course, and just kind of the conversations over the years, is you kind of debunk myths, right? I think that people think that there's kind of a cheat code to executive presence. There's going to be some training, and all of a sudden you're going to walk into a room and storm the room. So what are some of the common myths or conceptions you've encountered about the topic executive presence, and how would you challenge or reframe them?
Well, typically there is the white male as the exemplar of executive presence. 6'2", dresses in a certain way, speaks in a certain way, immediately commands the room by the sheer all of their presence. Those are all good things, and they're not so much out there, but from some years ago. But now there is a lot more acceptance of who you are, your authenticity that you bring into the room. I'm not 6'2", as Tony will tell you, but I don't lose it in height when I don't have it walking into the room. I have no need to, and these myths of reflecting what the majority folk will project. I think folk today want you to show up authentic and show up real, show up you, even as you still are sensitive to fit within the corporate culture by which you are navigating. But when it comes to height, when it comes to you got to dress a certain way, and I'll talk about dress in a little while, is you can dress still culturally and still make it through. When it comes to what confidence looks like, that's going to be different for various people, and so we were all trying to reach that normative peak and said that that's what it is. And the day, it's not what it is. It's all relative to who you are. And as we get into this conversation, I want to point out some things that the most important thing is showing up as uniquely you in the environment. You don't have to fake it till you make it. You can be you in that environment with some provisos that I'll talk about in a little while.
Yeah, there's a saying, show up as yourself, everyone else is taken already.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so my next question, in addition to the myths, one of the qualities I deeply admire in leaders with a strong executive presence is their ability to speak with intention and purpose. So they don't seek to dominate the conversation. They speak with intent. So what's your perspective on the power of strategic silence and intentional communication as it relates to executive presence?
Oh, very, very, very great question. Let's say it this way. Timing is everything. Timing. And the more I've been in leadership, the more I read, is sometimes there is a value of being the last person in the room to speak. Because the more you speak and the earlier you speak, you begin to lose some of the margin and influence you can have in the room. If you're talking all the time, folk at some point begin to shut you down and just dismiss you, and you were just blah 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 in the ether. But when you take time to come in a little later in the speaking things, what happens? It says you are listening and you have listened. It gives you a chance to hear the various perspectives, and when you finally come in, there is a certain level of gravitas that you're going to come in with. Now, when you are insecure leader, you feel the need to set the parameters. You feel the need to impress with folk what you know, and you don't need to do that when you are secure in who you are. And I find whether it makes a difference to racial background, that when you have an insecure leader, they're talking all over the place because they're trying to impress. But when you are very calibrated in your speech, you're listening, you're responding with substance, and you're not only responding with substance, you're responding with ideas to meet ideas, so that you are following the train of thought. You're coming in at appropriate times that adds to the conversation. And that's why I start off by saying timing is everything. And I think the more meetings you're in, the more interactions you have, the more you can read the room. And it's not just reading the room trying to be political, but it's reading the room to know when to speak, when not to speak, when to hold back, and to be able to read that and get good at that. The more meetings you're in, the more opportunities you have a chance to be in certain settings. Because people are reading you even in those comments, how you come off, how you speak to it, how you address it, how you come at it. And so learning that ability to when to step in, when not, framing your responses before you speak, thinking through it, knowing how you're going to come in and land, not long speeches where you are doing those stem winders, trying to mesmerize the room, because you do not mesmerize the room. But the ability to read it, when to say it, when to do it, and to do it as delayed as possible to make sure that others have had a chance to speak prior to your coming in. It's amazing at the weight of your words when you come in a little later into the conversation.
And I think, one of the things it's interesting because I saw a bit of a correlation. One of the things that you touched on is an insecure leader. And I remember in the training that we had a couple years ago, you talked about one of the most dangerous leaders that we could work with is a leader that's insecure, because it's difficult to navigate because you don't know their insecurities and you don't know what you're kind of navigating.
That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely. You see that at every level of the organization, whether they're high, low, or medium, trying to break in. Those insecurities begin to break through in ways that people don't even realize what they're giving off there.
Yeah, I think we all have to be transparent about moments as a leader where we had an insecure moment. Doesn't mean we were insecure leader. And I do think about like maybe the nervousness of the outburst or rushing to make a comment or rushing to try to be a part of a conversation that we may not be as skilled at. So I think if we continue to navigate our own insecurities, I think it just is a good component of building stronger executive presence.
Absolutely. And the combat that is being very secure in who you are, and how you do that is this thing of self-acceptance. And that's not trying to be what you're not, is being uniquely you. And what you mentioned earlier, it's only one of you that's in the place, so show up as that. But that comes about through your having some hits at the back. It comes through with the widening of your leadership responsibilities, your interacting, your understanding that you're dealing with people and that you're okay and that you're valued, and not feeling the need to prove is a way that one begins to get back insecurities. And we all have them. It takes a moment to get there. And the longer you're in the game, the better you become. But even early on, calming oneself, self-acceptance, and understanding that the people around you are uniquely human as well. They're not super creatures. They're not superhumans. They're regular people as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a good call out. Just remember that, no one's superhuman in the room, because then it might help you navigate the room with a little bit more ease.
Yeah.
And so that goes into my next question, and that's really about, a part of it is, are you even versed enough to speak on it, right? Are you knowledgeable enough? So how does credibility and competence serve as a foundational element of authentic executive presence? And how do you ensure that you're consistently cultivating both credibility and competence?
Well, let's talk about credibility first of all. Credibility is not given, it is earned. It is earned. It's number one. Number two about credibility is that credibility arises out of your ability and your commitment to be a leader of integrity. All you got as a leader is your credibility. If people discover that you're a liar, people discover that you're not truthful, they discover you have a low integrity, then your credibility will be on the line from the beginning. And so that comes from being a leader that leads, like what Covey says, and I mentioned this in your training, Tony, leading from the inside out, checking off those things on the inside, that you're committed to truthfulness, committed to integrity, committed to be a leader of character. That is the thing that undergirds the whole idea and the whole experience and the whole projecting of credibility. It's out of those intangibles are the things that get you there with that one. When it comes to the competence, there's no shortcut there, but then being competent. That means you're well prepared, you do your homework, you get the exposure, you get the support you need. You may want to tap into an executive coach. That begins to build your level of competence. that you take on extra work, you go beyond what is expected, and that you are consistent and you produce at a higher level each time. That begins to project the competence that you need to be considered for elevation in the company, but also your presence when you come into the room and you are interacting with your colleagues. That they see that at the end of the day, Tony can deliver. When you can deliver, no one can question that.
And I think you have to think about what makes you the most comfortable with your level of competence and how you prepare. For me, I'm a there's a component of me where I'm analytical. And so when I have some statistics to kind of either open or integrate into anything I'm talking about. So for example, in biotech, when I was discussing the DE&I strategy, I was very passionate about, Black people being 3 times more likely to have underlying health conditions for some of the clinical programs, and really tying some statistics to the importance of having diversity, a diverse workforce. But that builds my confidence, right? Because that's something I'm comfortable with, and I really like to connect data points when I'm talking to executives. The other thing that I think is important when you're building out and preparing is, what is your position on the conversation? Because sometimes we have a subject, and we might have a very opposing opinion of it, and even though you don't think that's translating in what you're saying, it probably is. So if it's something that you need to be neutral on, and you're very much against it, I wouldn't prepare to present on that, because even in your tone and your delivery, I think, and we'll talk a little bit about nonverbals a little bit later, but I think that could even come across as, not authentic, because you're not showing up as yourself. So I think the confidence piece, to your point, is a part that you continue to build and grow in. And credibility is earned. I mean, you may not earn it that day. You may need to build up to that. So sometimes I have what I call the meeting before the meeting, where I'll meet with several stakeholders prior to that actual meeting or that presentation or that deliverable, to get a little bit more buy-in before we get into the larger room. We don't talk, and that people call it politicking, I call it stakeholder building, and then it also helps you have that credibility going into the room.
And builds your confidence as well, because you're having a chance to share your perspective before you get there and to hear theirs as well. Excellent, Tony. I like that. Stakeholder building. I just stole that one from you.
Yeah, because I'm going into the room like, well, I know at least 7 out of 10 people in this meeting are aligned with what I'm talking about. And that does, to your point, that does position your confidence a little bit differently. All right, so I think I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I love to talk about, to extent, what does body language influence the way others perceive your confidence, your executive presence? Can you share how you become more aware or intentional in this area as it relates to your body language and how that plays into confidence and executive
Yeah,
presence?
another great question. Body language is usually governed by the calmness that you have on the inside. That there's a peace, there's a calmness, there is a sense of well-being. And when you're calm, you project calmness as well. And when it comes to executive presence, because things are always happening and popping off, the unexpected, the unanticipated, the need to project a calm is important, which govern your body language, where you're not jerky, where you're not over animated with your gestures, too wide of gestures, of making sure that you're not bouncing around and moving in the seat. I've been in rooms, I've seen a leader in the meeting, they're talking with their leg is just shaking all the way, not because they're nervous, it's just a twitch, it's a habit that they have picked up of trying to discard all of those little idiosyncrasies of body that we can all have at times. Sometimes I found myself some years ago, Tony, straightening my glasses a lot. The glasses were fine. It was just a nervous twitch. And so the ability to be calm, walk into a meeting serene, allows you to manage your body language, where you're not giving off something where it's being interpreted that is total polar opposites from where you are. I want to say again for emphasis, it starts off initially, and driving it is that projection of calm, that you have from the inside out of starting and being in a meeting, that you can be okay and you're fine.
And I think for me, I agree. Like I can tell when I'm getting nervous because I start to speak at speed. So I have a bit of a more speed to my tone. So I have different, different ways that I kind of calm myself. For me, it's humor, or maybe looking at someone in the room who I have a really good rapport, or I know they're an advocate or sponsor. Maybe I'll say something that, in jest, if it's appropriate, that's a bit of humor to kind of bring my calmness to the room. And I'm actually starting to work on practicing doing a slight meditation prior to those sessions, like whether it's using a Calm app or using a YouTube meditation to just kind of center me into the conversation. And not just for a big meeting presentation, but even for something that could be, what I call my intense meetings, or something where I know that maybe I might be folding my arms because I'm completely opposed or frustrated about the conversation. So just kind of bringing myself to center and taking a beat in between. So I do think that cues are very important, and all of us have them. We just have to be, to your point, yours is adjusting the glasses. Mine sometimes could be, sometimes speaking too much with my hands, which I don't do as much anymore. But I think that that's something that you just want to be, you want to be aware of, because it, to your point, it could send off a message that has nothing to do with how you're showing up.
Well, that's some adjunctive, we concur, I concur, but that's some adjunctive stuff that we can also learn from a healthy emotional intelligence as well, EI, which is all about self-management. And what is not so much always, it's not just exclusively managing your emotions, managing your responses, thinking, projecting in a way that does not create unnecessary friction where it's not needed, because you got a healthy EI, but also just the whole notion of managing my body movements as well, being aware of those. And again, a good coach allows you to get that feedback, and not just from coach, but from your friends and colleagues. How do I come off in the room? Folk you can trust. That is excellent feedback. So you can make the adjustments, or you can say, no, I'm good with that. Or be with the knowledge, I didn't even know I was doing that. But to get the feedback allows you to get help in those matters that you cannot automatically see and perceive at all times.
And I do want to touch on, Freddie, the conversation a little bit more about the emotional intelligence and being self-aware, because I think that's the missing factor that a lot of people don't understand about executive presence. I think that they think that there's like there's a secret tool or a secret weapon to how to master this, but it has a lot to do with reflection, getting feedback, getting perspective, being self-aware in your emotional intelligence plays a really critical role in how you grow in this capacity. And any thoughts on that?
Let me say it this way. The higher you go in an organization, the more acute your EI or your emotional intelligence must be. And one of the things today in interviews of candidates for leadership, companies are looking for what is their read of their EI, their emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence, as you know, and our audience knows, is just a flyover very quickly. It has to do with such self-management, self-control, the ability to be aware of your emotions, also the things that can trigger your emotion. If you're a amygdala hijack, what can get you upset without you even knowing it, to be aware of the environment that you're in, and be able to take your temperature in the moment in order to regulate it, so that you're not overplaying, underplaying, but that you are, as far as you can be, appropriate in the moment. But it also has to do with your reading other folks' emotions as well, and calibrating or adapting to that. So you're reading your own, you're reading others to keep conversations at the optimal level that you want them to be. And now sometimes we get home and EI goes out the window. Forget it. Say like I want to say. But I think even working that at home. not out of some way where it's a manipulative thing where your spouse is upset and you, as calm as you can be, I know the house is about to be mortgaged. We don't pay the mortgage. I want to be calm about this. No, you're gonna be upset as well. But the thing is not to be cussing and fussing and just losing control. That works also at home, but it definitely has a roll over into the workplace. I would make an observation. We have a person that was hired with the highest job in the world that sits in Washington, D.C. I have never seen a leader with as low emotional intelligence as him. Out of control, just spouting off stuff, demeaning.
Not regulating it.
It doesn't care about anything he puts out at any given moment. Just a very, and unfortunately across the country, we're developing this culture that people are saying, well, that's the way to act, and it's not. And it is deep sixing leaders who cannot manage themselves and control themselves and regulate themselves in any given moment.
And I think that, I just think that this is such an important part of your growth, whether it be in transformational leadership, executive presence, emotional regulation, and knowing what your triggers are, because we all have triggers, right? So I know for me, two of my triggers in a meeting or presentation is when somebody completely derails a conversation. And so I have to regulate my emotion to even, first of all, respond to that, because I'm going to come and say, we're not talking about that. So I have to, first of all, take regroup a bit, recalibrate, and also, be observant of everyone in the room. How many people are actually interested in the derailing, right? Whether I'm interested or not, but if the majority of the room is curious about it, is it the right time to pivot it back? Or is everybody else annoyed, and do I need to take control of the room and kind of, politely bring it back? So you just have to be aware of your triggers. You have to be aware of where your tone or your pitch might change. And it has a lot to do with how you want to show up in that and how you regulate that emotion.
And it's knowing yourself, what you are framing it around. But again, getting feedback from friends and colleagues you trust who care about you. That's been some of the best self-knowledge I've gotten. It's not only that I derive it through my own self-observations, but talking to others who really care, that would give it to me straight, which means that this thing of building executive presence means that you got accountability in your life. People who can talk to you very straight, who can tell you when you're right, who can tell you when you're wrong, people who love you but are not impressed by you at all, because they're able to give it to you in a way that they care, which informs you, which allows for you to make the adjustments, I want to use the word again, adaptations that you need to make sure that you do come off well in those public settings where people are weighing, judging, assessing you on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Well, I am enjoying this conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting into the second half. But we do have to pay the bills, and we're going to actually go to an advertisement with one of our transformative partners, Potty Products, who is a sponsor. If you would like to be a sponsor with Detroit Girl Transform, please contact me at dgt313podcast@gmail.com. We have different advertisement packages that we'll be providing our teams. We'll be providing potential sponsors. And again, that's dgt313podcast@gmail.com. And now over to our commercial.
We asked a group of scientists, what does it take to make the perfect toilet paper? And here's what they said. That's right. Use Potty Products, please. Thank you.
I love it.
Shout out to Potty Products. They are day ones. They've been supporting Detroit Girl Transform, but we are looking and excited about some additional sponsors who are going to come on board starting in season 2. So Freddie, let me know if you're interested.
Absolutely. I'm not sure
So
I can compete with that commercial, but hey, I'll try my best.
I know, right? I know everybody loves that commercial. So I do want to kind of get back into, so we've talked a little bit about what to be aware of, what not to do, but I also want to talk about, what does great look like, and how do you want to show up, and how should you show up? So what are 5 signature traits or behaviors that someone with exceptional executive presence consistently demonstrates, especially when no one is watching?
Poise, I would put number 1, because people are looking for people. People are always comfortable around those who keep their poise and not excitable, that they're able to be calm and collective, if I could use that word. The ability to speak with confidence, that they know what they're talking about, but speaking about it in such a way where there's no arrogance in it, where it's condescending or it is speaking down to people. That level of confidence, the ability to speak clearly, that you articulate clearly, that no one has to decipher what you're talking about, that your language, your articulation is there. The ability to convey empathy with people. I was reading an article in Harvard Business Review, and they were doing a comparison between some of the traits of executive presidents 20 years ago and today. And one of the ones 20 years ago was all about external stuff that you were showing, but now is there an empathetic way that you lead, that you actually care about people? And I think the last one there would be one that is huge, and always think about it as being huge. But you touched on it earlier, that you come across as authentic, you come across as credible, you come across as real, and folk are always looking for that to bring them ease themselves in that work environment. And we've been around a leader that projects those qualities there of confidence. They speak well. There's a calmness. There is a way that they convey care through empathy. They have a basic credibility. Those are all qualities that enhances one's executive presence, and they are both tangibles and intangibles, and being aware of that. And again, I want to emphasize, not from a tactical standpoint of view, but where it becomes uniquely you, because
Yes.
it becomes tactical, then you put it on and put it off. You can drop it at any moment. But when it becomes uniquely and innately who you are, then it's much more visceral in how you put forth with conveying executive presence.
And I
And
think,
sometimes, yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and keep in mind, these are qualities that you do. However, executive presence is also in the eye of the beholder. People will size it up from their own perspective, but I think it comes about, again. These are qualities that you put on that are a natural part of your presentation. I think it goes a long way in people considering, looking, and your influence that you have in the room, which is the executive presence at its best.
And I think that one of the things that's so important, to your point, is that we've evolved the concept of executive presence. So what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago is not what it is today. And I think our youth really modeled that. Like, you have to have a level of empathy and connection to really even connect with some of the emerging leaders, for sure. And I think when we go to a lot of the conferences as they're talking about future progression, there's always a question: what if CEO stood for Chief Empathy Officer instead of Chief Executive Officer, and what would that company look like? What would that leader look? What would that leadership experience look like? Because the higher up you get is about confidence and the ability to inspire and motivate and provide a vision, to people to get things done. And it has to be, to your point, clear and concise. And I always tell my team, if you have to explain something 4 times, 5 times, and I know you're frustrated, at that point you got to reflect on how it was conveyed the first time, and was it clear enough? And so that is a part of executive presence. And also, just we all have visuals of who we find to be very inspiring, or someone we want to follow, whether it be a podcast or so. Why don't we try to mimic and model that, and not necessarily in an authentic way, but also exhibit the behaviors that we found to be inspiring in how we convey.
I found, if you don't mind, I found three 35 seconds apiece scenario of people who modeled what they thought was executive presence. 2 of them got the job, 1 didn't. But this adds and brings color to what we're talking about this evening. This is straight out of HBR as well. This is 3 different people who 1 made executive level and 2 didn't out of the executive presence. So every manager would love to have a Frank Simmons on his or her management team. Experienced, results-oriented, collaborative, and committed to the company. Frank showed up on succession lists for a number of years, but was never promoted. Although a top performer in this area, Frank always looked a little rumpled, and his posture was a bit hunched. When he made presentations to the executive team, he was invariably well prepared, but his lack of comfort was evident in his body language. Normally highly articulate, his presentations were long-winded and rambling. In the Q&A portion of his presentations, he tended to be overly deferential to members of the executive team, and was hesitant to insert himself into the conversation when the executives got into debate. As one senior executive said privately, Frank is an incredible asset to the company, but I just can't envision putting him in front of the customer. So that thing of his dress, his confidence, he did not exude that. All of those things begin to play into this thing of executive presence, and also for future and potential promotion. Listen to the second. Alicia Wallace was a highly trained marketing manager who has succeeded in every assignment she had. However, when it came time to select high potential people for promotion to more senior levels, she always missed the cut. As much as the senior marketing executives liked and respected her, they were never quite comfortable moving her to the next level. The reason? Her apparent disorganization. People would talk about Alicia being Alicia. When she arrived late to yet another meeting, rushed, harried, and with her files askew, was this trivial or petty? Perhaps, but on a visceral level, it caused senior people to question her bandwidth to manage a larger staff and maintain the necessary focus on implementing pre-cut priorities. Just being organized, prepared, as we talked about earlier. Those things can check you off on some things. Intangible may not seem that big a deal to you, but others are watching each time. Because folk have to envision you at the next level. They got to see
They have to see
that you're the
it.
type
They
of
have to
person
see it.
that can be there. Listen to the last. And the last I wanted to read, because this is antithetical to everything we thought about executive presence. But listen to how it plays out. If you enter the room filled with 20 managers, Lydia Taylor, a member of the legal department, wouldn't stand out. But that would change once the dialogue started. Although soft-spoken and not terribly aggressive, she was highly respected by her peers as well as the executives with whom she worked. Lydia possessed outstanding listening skills, had an unerring sense of when to enter the conversation to make her point. Timing is everything. Unrushed, straightforward, and inflappable, she maintained her calm, even demeanor when others got emotional. And she used her dry sense of humor to diffuse difficult situations. When challenged by others, she stood her ground in a firm, non-confrontational way. Although highly supportive of her internal customers, she's prepared to put her foot down if anyone advocated a position that may put the company at risk. As a result, Lydia was identified as a top candidate and groomed to succeed the company's general counsel. Totally antithetical what we thought, but just
Yeah,
watching her operate, that timing, or when to speak, the
intentional.
confidence,
Mhm.
intentional, all the things that you and I talked about earlier plays out with Lydia. And we see those other things with the other two, that they were competent in many degrees, but it's those little things, it's those little foxes, those little checks that can begin to impact you unnecessarily by just being aware of them, taking care of them, and make the correction that you need in your leadership, in the way that you project, in the way that you come off.
And I love all three of those scenarios because all of them at some point probably were either told or were under the impression that they were ready to progress to those executive level roles. And what I see from my chair and my lens as an HR partner, practitioner, is at times leaders will give the feedback, hey, you need to work on your executive presence. Well, that doesn't help, right? Because we don't know what component you need to work on. So with the first one, you have to be very specific and say, this is the particular area of the executive presence. The one that was unorganized, that's a good tangible follow-up. Hey, you don't appear to be organized and prepared. People can't envision you leading the company and taking us to the future because there's a credibility piece with people that are unorganized. And for the first one, your appearance is not something that we feel would be great for external facing to the customer. And it's not, and in order to go into an executive level, you have to be able to be external facing to the customers at our company. But we don't often tell people that. We just give them a very ambiguous comment and say, you need to work on your executive presence. And people spend hours, weeks, months reading books, articles, which isn't bad. It's a good thing to understand the concept, but you have to know exactly what areas you need to work on. And it is the responsibility of the leader, but I want to just challenge us all to understand that may not happen. So what Freddie was saying earlier about asking people that you trust in the room, people that you really know have an invested interest in your success, you may have to ask them for the feedback to actually get to the root of where you need to work to elevate.
And even if your company does not sponsor it or provide it, it's worth, I want to say the third time, investing in a coach, a leadership coach, because it's there. Your coach becomes your thinking partner. They help you to work through things, sensitive matters. It can point out some things that you may not see otherwise through the inductive and deductive reasoning that you are able to process through to see changes and adjustments yourself without anyone saying it to you. But as Tony mentioned, we both discussed with friends and family and colleagues, but in addition to coach as well, all good feedback vehicles to get the information you need to be the best you that shows up in the workplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so one, I have just one or two more questions. One is just more
Sure.
kind of a reflection. Complete this sentence. In order to elevate my brand and strengthen my executive presence, I had to let go of blank and become more comfortable with blank.
Let me insert one. In order to elevate my van, I must let go of a brand. I must let go of fear of conflict.
Yes.
And what's the last part of that?
And then be more comfortable with
We're confronting issues in a direct manner, because conflict is healthy, and the ability to engage it while being very healthy in doing it says a lot about you. That you can take on the tough issues, that you can engage in productive disagreement without it becoming personal, without we're taking it out back in the old days in the hood.
we used to call it take it out back.
There are ways we can deal with this.
Yeah.
But your ability to manage conflict, even disagreement in the rooms. I mean, it says a lot. There is a classiness, there is a skill level when you're able to disagree in the room and folks say, wow, I like how they did that. When no one
Yeah.
feels diminished, no one feels under attack, but you did it in such a way, so surgically, so smoothly, that even in disagreement, your stock goes up in people's eyes.
And I think I'll also answer that question, kind of answer that reflection. In order to elevate my brand and strengthen my executive presence, I had to let go of the need to be right and become more comfortable with the need for curiosity.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's powerful, Tony. That's powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last, yeah.
And I just want to take a moment. I've watched you in rooms. You do that quite well. I mean, you certainly are no shrinking violet. You certainly are confident in speaking and speaking to things. But there's also an humility, and you bring folk out through your questioning of other people, trying to elicit where they're coming from. I think that you have hit the perfect calibration of that. And I watched you a couple of times do that. And I sat back and says, wow, she's good.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from my one of my informal executive coaches. I appreciate that. I think
Yes.
I want to always be transparent on my podcast and not make this about me telling you how to do something, but talk about my transformative journey with my guests, especially people that unlock that. Like you unlocked so many different aspects of my growth and executive presence. It's important for me to appreciate you and give you your flowers on that as well.
Well, I'll receive that. Thank you, Tony.
Well, last question before we get into the Q&A. What energizes you about the work that you do?
Ah, this right here. I enjoy when I'm in the middle of a training day and the lights begin to go on in
Mhm.
minds around the room where people have aha moments. That is the thing that drives what I do. And they see the adaptations and changes and nuance things they must do and that leadership. And it's not so much me telling them, it's the self-discovery of
Yes.
that. You certainly provide the menu, you provide the contours of that. But when people are leaders whether it's in coaching, whether it's in training, the lights go on and a person goes to the next level right there in the room because something that has been dancing around them for years and they didn't see it, all of a sudden they see it and it is so, here's the word, so transformational for them
Yeah. Yeah.
that their forward progress is moved forward exponentially. That's what drives me.
I love that. I love that because I think for most companies, if you're going to invest in a training, it needs to be transformational and it needs to accelerate where you're trying to go. I wouldn't want anything that moves, at a stagnated pace, but something that's just like, and it is when that moment of that light bulb goes off, that moment of self discovery, self reflection. I think when, we get the team training. And in my role as HR, I have, we have a lot of observation, but to see several members of my leadership team say, "Oh, I didn't realize I was showing up this way in the team," but everybody else like, "Yes, yes, you." But it's important for that person to come to that discovery versus the finger pointing, right? I think self reflection and self discovery is going to be the most impactful and the most powerful, and I think that's the transformational journey of executive presence is that opportunity to be your authentic self and really grow in that self-discovery of how you and reflect on how you're showing
Yeah.
up.
And in tandem with executive presence is what is called executive voice as well.
Yes.
And that is that again, the speaking with confidence, your ability to be analytical, your ability to speak to what can happen, suggestions, ideas that are workable in the room, all of that as your executive voice, which they are tandem together, presence, voice, all one.
Absolutely. Well, we want to open up the questions for our audience. You have an opportunity to ask questions to myself and Freddie, definitely about the concept of executive presence or how you want to elevate your brand, which is, really in correlation, very similar. So, love to get your questions in the chat. We'll answer as many as we can. If you have any feedback, any shout outs, anything that resonated to you on this session today, please put that in the chat as well. We love that kind of feedback. This is our first masterclass in season 2. So we want to hear from you. Shout out. Let us know what you think. And we definitely want to answer your questions. If we don't get any questions, that means we've done an exceptional job. But we'll give it another minute or so.
While folk are contemplating and reflecting on what to write, I would just add that a person that really exemplifies a great executive presence to me is in the political world, and that is the senior senator now from New Jersey, that is Cory Booker. I've watched Booker evolve in that seat that he holds in the Senate from New Jersey. And where he was 10 years ago and where he is now, totally different. He was overly deferential, I thought, at one time. I thought that he was trying to please and trying to play up. But now he has evolved into a confident, controlled, compassionate, and credible, I use all the C's there, a leader that sits at the apex of this, at the peak of this country, and he models that quite well. He, as you used the word early on, Tony, he evolved into that. I'm certain he made the adjustments and the changes based on feedback as he worked in the job. He became more competent, more comfortable in what he was doing, and that's the path for all of us. There is no shortcut. No one expects for you on your day one showing up. You're gonna have all the bells and whistles in place. It's to be patient for yourself, give yourself a chance to grow, be intentional on your growth, and all these things begin to kick in without almost imperceptible, because it becomes such a normal part of you. You're no longer just watching it, trying to do it intentional. Either you are intentional, but eventually it becomes uniquely you again.
And I think he demonstrated probably the highest level of poise in a very intense situation when he stood his ground about not leaving a meeting and representing the American people. And even though there was chaos around him and intensity around him, you could tell he prepared for that level of intensity and he prepared for that moment. And it was a really good inspirational reflection of true leadership.
Tony, I know we only have about a minute left, almost looks like, but can I just mention Black folk in executive presence, us uniquely?
Yes, yeah, we can take the time because it's important.
Oh, okay.
To talk about Black people and how this concept shows up for us.
I think that we as a people are blessed with the innate ability to read the room. We have to be more adept, more sensitive. Our antenna must be to read things more acute than anybody else, because we're usually minorities in the room. And I think our biggest thing is the need to be very comfortable in who we are. I've been in rooms early on when I started work, and I was so intimidated by my white colleagues. They said things in such a way that it sounded impressive. How they spoke in their coded, not trying to be coded, but in the ways that they speak. It felt when I spoke that I was just out of tempo, not
Yeah.
really hitting it how they hit it. Until it dawned on me is that they ain't saying no more than I'm saying, and sometimes
No.
less than what I'm saying. And it
Yeah.
comes off as erudite and intelligent, and sometimes it's not. It's not.
No.
And my being confident enough of what I bring to the table through assiduous preparation, through tenacity, through grit, through learning and watching and observing and trusting the instincts that I have, and not taking a second or third chair to anyone, not trying to be overly bravado, with bravado and all of that. I'm talking about calmly and assured that you're okay and you're all right, and no need to flip to being something that you're not, or feeling that you cannot articulate because how they express it and how they do it. Begin to listen around you and discover you may, in fact, be feeling a lot better and a lot straighter and bringing more to the table. Because sometimes, as we all know, that even when you bring things to the table, it may not be a knowledge. And there may be others who will come to say the exact thing that you
Thank,
said and will be acknowledged.
and it's riveting.
Don't lose your confidence over that.
Yeah.
Stay with what you are. Don't get angry. Don't get mad. Understanding that's the dynamics what it is. And when you get into leadership, you're certainly going to model something totally different. You learn to lead by watching folk do it well, and you learn to lead by watching folk do it bad. Either way, you're going to learn.
Yeah. You're going to learn what you don't want to do and what you do want to do. And also, we have to give ourselves credit for being in a room where nobody looks like us and sounds like us for many, many years. So it could be just the tone and the voice is different because you're the only person that sounds that way. You're the only person that looks that way. And so because we're listening to so many people that don't look like us, it could come across that what we're saying is out of place just from the fact that it isn't going to sound the same or look the same, right? But we do have two questions. So first of all, thank you to Carla. Carla talked about, and I agree, she said she's in education, but she finds this subject to be transferable. I think this subject of executive presence is transferable, whether you're an entrepreneur, education, if you are in community meetings, if you're in business meetings, if you're in academia, it doesn't matter. I think this is a transferable subject. So thank you for calling that out, Carla, because I agree. This has very little to do with corporate America. You could be doing a toast at a graduation, right? I just think that this is a concept that is truly needed. One of the questions is, if you are moving up in your position within the same organization, what are key factors to consider when presenting yourself as the new leader among people who've known you in the previous role?
Your consistency, um, 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 allowing them to get to know you, because usually they may have been familiar with you, but did not know you in some cases. But allowing them to get to know you, being relaxed in it, being friendly, being open, being appropriately transparent, always presenting yourself to a new leader among people who have known you previously. They've known you at some level that's been limited, but now as you work more closely with them, as you interface with them, they certainly have a deeper exposure as to who you are, and they will come to discover the delightful person that you've always been and that you're presenting there. But again, transparency, openness, confidence, willingness to learn, all of those are qualities that make people comfortable as you integrate into the new level of the team that you have assembled.
Yeah, because you're the same person, you're in a different role, and you just want to make sure they continue to get to know even more about who you are, and also you get to know more about them, right? And that observation and that willingness to learn. Next question is from Shar Robinson as well. Can you name 2 to 3 of the most effective leadership strategies to implement in the first 90 days in a new executive leadership position?
Sure. A listening tour, making sure you're conveying. I want to listen to where we are trying to catch up with it. Spending time individually with your team, where they are hearing your heart, but you also are hearing their hearts, and also making sure that the initial changes that you may make, that you are getting some decent input from others to make sure
Yes,
that
stakeholder
these are
buy-in.
changes that's going to work within you, that will work within your organization and unit that you're leaving, not just making change for change's sake, because change for change's sake can blow up on you. Making sure that you are being very thoughtful in your initial changes as you make them. Folk are expecting the change, but convey a thoughtfulness with it. And also be able to say, as I have listened, as I've observed and spent one-on-one time, these are some changes you're going to make. And it seems to be reflective of what most of us are on the team at this point.
Yes, and
Noting it through the relational conversations that you've had.
and not just coming in. So like, I love that you led with the listening tour. I do it in different capacities when I start a new role. In HR, sometimes I do a role show where I bring in several executives and we go and we listen to different components of the business on what's working, what's not working, kind of a start, stop, and continue. And we kind of combine that data and come back with some recommendations. I also definitely agree with you on, making sure that you get stakeholder buy-in, and your stakeholder could be your team, it could be the leaders you work for, it could be the people that you support. But when you come in and make abrupt changes and you don't get buy-in, you're just not going to get people to move, right? But you got to get that stakeholder buy-in. Don't make change to make change, to your point, because I always say if it ain't broke, it don't need to be fixed. So, really empower people and compliment people for the things that are running as a well-oiled machine. So you will figure out what are the things you want to tackle from those listening tours. So how you prioritize and what you prioritize will start with listening to the team and your stakeholders on what needs to get done.
Absolutely. And you're sending a message to them, because what it does, the byproduct of moving it that way, allows you not to gather opposition so early and so quick. It allows them to get to know you, which it means it won't end up in opposition. It will just be tactical disagreements on how to approach, and not, I got to fight against you, the person there.
Yes, absolutely. Because at that point, I'm fighting against someone I don't really know. I don't know why. We don't do a good job of explaining the why. Spending time with your team is important. You'll be surprised at how many people get into a brand new role, especially in an executive role. They're moving very fast, and in 6 months in, your team doesn't have deliverables. They don't have objectives. They don't know what the deadlines are. They don't know what the goals are. And so it's important for people to get to know you and your heart, and also know what to expect. And you don't want to be 6 to 8 months in and people don't know their key priorities and desired business outcomes for the rest of the year.
For certain.
Awesome. Well, this was fun. I'm so excited that you came and hung out with me.
My honor. I totally enjoyed this, and you have such an agile mind. It's always good to exchange ideas and the dialogue together. And I hope it was news that folk can use and deploy in their own development as leaders.
I know it was. So I definitely would look forward to, and we want to keep the conversation going. This is our first masterclass. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at DGT underscore 313, on Facebook, Detroit Girl Transformed. Drop a note. Let me know how it goes as you deploy this information that you receive and what's happening. I'm always curious to know about transformative experiences. So Freddie, it is always an honor and a pleasure. I will tell you, we must do it again.
Absolutely.
And enjoy your time, because I know you're spending good family time. So thank you for stepping away to really empower us and help us in our transformation journey. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. And everybody check me out every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. We're in season 2. It's transformation time, baby.